Greetings, 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 everyone, and welcome to a special Talkback edition of 101 Live. I am your host tonight, Risikat Okedeyi, and I normally do these on Sunday, but with this amazing production, I had to jump in on it and hang out with you all this Friday. So we are going to get into a really great conversation about the piece you just saw, Campaign 72, which is a one-woman bioplay about Shirley Chisholm. It's fitting for the time that we're living in, and I'm really excited to welcome our guests. So let's get into it. First, I'd like to welcome Odell B Ruffin. He's a writer, director, and actor. He's starred in several theatrical productions. He's also the artistic director of Ruffin Entertainment Productions and the playwright and the director behind the piece you just saw. Welcome to the show, Odell. How are you?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm feeling good.
I'm glad. All right. So next, this is going to be such a good night. I'm so excited. Okay. So next up, we have the star of the show, Ms. Dominique C. Brown. She is a multi-talented actor who has been featured in everything from Hamlet to For Colored Girls Only. She was the very talented, gifted person you saw portray Shirley Chisholm in the piece we just saw. So Dominique, welcome to the show. Oh, show. There you go. Hey.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And rounding out our esteemed panel tonight, we have very talented Colle Jemibewon. She is a lawyer, a proud graduate of Howard University. I know I need to make sure I say that because you HU this very seriously. She has a law degree from American University, Washington College of Law. And for the last decade, she has played a very important role as a staff attorney at the DC Public Defender Service. She will be weighing in on lots of things. I'm really excited to have her in here. Hey, Colle, how are you?
Hi, well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to do this. So I like to start this conversation off with something I do with each of my shows. How are you all doing? Like really doing today? Like this is, it's a Friday evening. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. It's a lot going on. So what's the day been like?
I mean, I've been on cloud nine the whole day. So
I love it.
It's exciting for me.
Okay. Okay. Dominique, what about you?
I spent majority of the day with my niece, going over her online schooling with her, kind of stepping into a more present role in her life.
Right.
And then I had to ship her off with my mom to get a break.
Okay. As a professional auntie, I have 10 nephews and nieces. So yeah, the pumpkins keep us busy, but they make our lives great. And then finally, Ms. Colle, how are you today?
I'm well. I'm actually encouraged, fired up, and thinking about the legacy of Shirley Chisholm today, and looking forward to this conversation. So I'm encouraged, fired up.
I'm glad that you're here. Okay, so Odell, I wanted to start with you because this is a really important piece. And I think did it premiere at last year's DC Black Theater Festival? Or
it did. It actually the origin of the play premiered in Los Angeles in 2016, but it made its DC premiere at the DC Black Theater Festival, not this year, but the year before.
Right. Okay. So what inspired you to write Campaign 72, and how do you go about? Because you've done a really great job weaving her speeches and her stories. So can you talk a little bit about how you came to write this and how you actually put it together?
Well, I'd always heard about Shirley Chisholm when I was younger. I have to stop for a second and just say, I love the shirt, Colle, that you're wearing. I love that T-shirt right there. 72.
Yeah.
And that's a good year. That's a real good year.
It is. I always heard about her when I was younger, and I noticed that we didn't really go too much into her story. So as I got older, I got a little bit more curious. And I saw a wonderful documentary, I believe it's called Chislom 72. That's what it is, a wonderful documentary. And I was just fired up behind this amazing woman at that time in the 1970s to be that fierce. I was like, wow, she's bad. And the combination of wanting to write a one-woman piece, I wanted to figure out, I didn't know what I was going to write about, but I knew that I definitely wanted to write a one-woman piece. And when I saw her story, I said, this has got to be on the stage, period. And that's where I went with it. So I was fired up behind that, fired up behind just being and having more people be aware of her story, education wise. So that's how it started.
And just as a follow-up, why? Because you are multimedia. You've done short films, you've done plays, you do a lot of things. Why did you feel like the play form was the best way to present this story?
It's more Dominique does a wonderful job, you know, on the live stage of it. Like, it's more engaging on the stage for an audience. And I believe that, I'm pretty sure her story is gonna skyrocket to many platforms, but just having the experience of having Shirley just come alive and speak to the audience is so moving. And so I believe that we needed to hear from her. We needed to hear from the essence of her live during those shows. And there's nothing more terrific than that.
I love it. Moving on to Dominique. It's a great segue. How familiar were you with Shirley Chisholm before you took on this role? And what was the process of becoming her? Because you really did embody her in a lot of ways. It was really impressive to see.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I knew of her, like, not in great details. I think she's somebody who we kind of like sound bites, like the first Black woman who was a congresswoman, and that's about it. I didn't really know about her like personal story. And when I first approached it, I mean, it was intimidating. I'm like, oh my goodness, she's an icon. You know what I mean? How am I going to embody this phenomenal woman who has paved the way and opened doors for so many that came behind her? So it was really, really intimidating. But as I did research and watched film on her and her background, I noticed we have like a lot of similarities. And at the time when I got cast, I was actually living in Brooklyn, so that was like a great connection. To like, you know, be in the area where she basically grew up and developed, and to know that we both had like a speech problem, if you will, a lisp or whatever. So that was a great like connection between us two.
So how do you? Because I the idea of becoming Shirley Chisholm, it's daunting when you think about how big this woman was. So what were some of the things you did to actually kind of pull yourself into her space?
Really just approach it like I would any other script, any other character, doing the research, because there's actual footage and things that I can watch on her to try to get it as accurate. And again, I just started from our similarities with the list. Being able to go back to that where my speech wasn't the best and kind of slide into it that way. So I basically, as I like dressed as Shirley, the first thing that would get me into it was her speech. Like, she has a very particular cadence and speech pattern that is kind of like musical, and it's just like, all right, this is how I get my way into it. And then just to like go deeper into researching and watching her as she delivered her speeches and how she interacted with people. It's amazing. Like, she's a funny lady, and like she didn't take no mess. She told it like it was, and it was like, all right, this is somebody who like I recognize in like people I know every day. These qualities I already possess. So it was just drawing that connection and trying to get out of my head about this political powerhouse, this figure, because it doesn't do me any justice if I get in my head about it. Like, I won't be able to do the work.
Well, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And it makes me think, because, you know, it's interesting. If anybody is a literary person, I'm a literary person. When I watched that opening scene between her grandmother and how she's teaching her how to speak. I'm a Nigerian American, so there's something very resonating about the way that your parents prepare you for being in America and what the expectations are. And so I was immediately reminded of Brownstone's Brown Girls by Polly Marshall as I was watching that scene. And just the way, when you're of the next generation, what the expectations are. And I wondered, Colle, for you, when we think of Shirley Chisholm, I know now the time that we're living in, she's getting a lot of attention. But what do you think her legacy is? And do you feel she has been given her just due, historically speaking?
Yeah, so her legacy, I think there are many facets. She didn't want to be remembered as the first Black woman to run for president or the first Black woman to be elected to Congress. She wanted to be remembered as a Black woman who lived in the 20th century and dared to be herself and was a catalyst for change. And she absolutely accomplished that. So her self-described legacy, she accomplished it, and it's held on, it's held up. It remains untarnished. I think other enduring aspects of her legacy include, but are not limited to, her fight. You know, she rode through the neighborhoods of Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, when she was running for president with a bullhorn. And she said, "It's fighting Shirley," or something to that effect, because she was fighting for the people. So I think that fight is an essential element of her legacy, fighting for the poor, the marginalized, the working people. So that's absolutely held up, remains untarnished. Being courageously independent. Like Ms. Brown said, she said it like it was. She said what she thought. She was unbought and unbossed. Nobody was telling her what to say. No one had paid so much money that they could direct her thoughts or her actions. So she was courageously independent in her thoughts and actions. And she left a legacy of intentionally opening the door for those who she knew would come after her. So her legacy, unequivocally, it's held up, it's remained untarnished. As far as being recognized historically, there's a whole generation who doesn't know who she is, doesn't know her name, or they're just hearing it for the first time. So I do not believe she's been appropriately recognized for her tremendous contribution from a historical perspective. You can't overstate like the significance of her contribution when we talk about like President Barack Obama, or Vice President Howard University graduate Kamala Harris, or when we even talk about Hillary Clinton. Like we can't begin to honestly or completely talk about their significant contribution without talking about Shirley Chisholm's laying the groundwork for that, or the fact that there are over 25% of Congress serving right now who are women. Like, significance of that can't be fully acknowledged without talking about her legacy and contribution historically. She's not received her due. And I think I have to kind of call out that when the minority, when people of color, when those on the periphery leave it to the majority, right, to create the historical narrative, like we will be erased if we leave it to the majority to kind of determine what is important, what's relevant, what's significant. So I think for a very long time, that's what's happened. The majority has created the narrative and they've attempted to erase her. Making a comeback though.
Yeah.
I think this Odell, did you want to say something?
No, so just to piggyback off of her, we're like, one of the lines is we're in a new era now. So I believe we're in a renaissance right now when it comes down to historically Black figures being recognized. So we have a lot of stuff in development now. So now is the time where a lot of names that we hadn't heard of, we're going to hear about now. Right.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because she there's a point where she says, I'm a candidate who happens to be Black and a woman. And it's a very powerful statement in the context of what she's presenting. But I wonder if that messaging gets lost in translation in our current culture of wokeness, where, figures are expected to align themselves very publicly and very intentionally with their Blackness. And, Zora Neale Hurston was very much like this. She loved Black people, but she didn't feel like she needed to engage in sort of this I'm a Black woman type of thing. She was like, you can see what I am. I'm Zora, and I'm going to go do my thing. And Shirley Chisholm reminds me of that. But I wonder if the way that comes out, how that works in this current environment. Like, do you think I know what she's saying when she says it. Do you think that it's something that requires translation?
So I too know what she means when she says it, and I understand. I think the question, it can be manipulated and twisted. And is there a significant probability or likelihood that will happen, thereby necessitating an explanation? People will do what they want to do, with the historical record and attempt to make it fit into their narrative. I think it speaks for itself. We still are not a monolith. We still, are reasonable Black people can disagree about issues. And yeah, I think that is true on its face. I don't think that it necessitates further explanation. I think
because she says it herself that she's proud to be Black. She's proud to be woman, but she's not just the candidate for the Black people, or she's not just a voice for women, the women movement. She is all of these things, and she's a candidate for change. So much more than just this specific thing that you want to like pigeonhole her into because she looks this way.
Right.
And she discusses in her book Unbought and Unbossed, she discusses her experience in Congress and the expectation that all of the Blacks in Congress would form a block and they act as a union. And she's like, sometimes we do that. Sometimes our interests are aligned, but we're actually complex intellectual beings who have independent individual thoughts about things. So she said, I think we're better off if we operate as individuals, manifesting our strengths in different areas, as opposed to operating as a unit. You Black, I Black, you do what I say. We're more complex than that.
And we actually see that happening now in the current political landscape, where you have these varied voices of people who are all sort of approaching the same issue from these different perspectives. Odell, I wanted to know for you, Shirley Chisholm in and of herself is this huge energy. But I wondered, I think I know the answer, but I have to ask, why make it a one-person play?
I mean, there's a story that her story alone just lends to that. Like, just the way that she speaks, the way that she connects with people. I did not want to have that story really involved, even though we do have one figure that comes in through the short film. Actually steps in there, but originally, Shirley, she plays all the characters. So I mean, Dominique plays all the characters.
Yes.
But so her story was too dynamic. Like, she couldn't be contained to me. It was almost like as you watched her move, she operated everything. So that's how I couldn't see it any other way. I've never seen it beyond that.
And Dominique, you do switch up. I was like, oh, she's over here doing this. Oh, she's over here doing that. What is that like as an actor to have to shift in order to get the full story out? I've seen it done. I'm always going to be fascinated by it because I think it's just a level of brilliance that we don't see often. And I just thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I think that is what I found challenging the most. That's what Odell would get on me the most about. I'm like, just get somebody else to play these characters. I just want to stay Shirley. But yeah, it's really like a challenge trying to find the essence of each character and becoming a different person and being able to like make that fluid transition in and out, because you're having a conversation with yourself, but you're having a conversation with different people. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I think as actors, we're all a little bit off And I think it just makes you tap into that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I love it.
I'm going to talk to myself now.
There you go. It makes sense. It works. Do you think, Odell, that we are in a space? I've said this to a couple of people because you said it, but I feel like when we talk about this cultural renaissance that we are experiencing now, with so many ways that Blackness is showing up, what do you think is driving that? And what do you hope to see happen? Because I know you're working on a new production as well.
Well, what's driving it is the main thing that drives everything is money. Like there's money to be made in our stories, and that's what's happening. So we've crossed over. There's been so many other stories that's been on film now that's proven that overseas it can make money. So now that just opens up the floodgate to these stories. I'm grateful for that because I started writing a lot of period pieces in 2008, 2009. And around that time, before that, there was a couple of pieces. You had Ali, you had Malcolm X, but it wasn't a thing in terms of film or theater to actually be having a lot of the historically Black figure pieces put up. It wasn't as popular. So now it's in that direction. So for me, I'm happy because there's several stories that I haven't actually even stepped into that I definitely am looking forward to putting out there now that the medium is met up. So now the market is open to put these stories out. And so I really hope to see, I don't want to see our, all the stories just sort of rushed and put out there. I am happy that they're being developed, but I just want to make sure that we're capturing the pure essence of each individual that we're telling, because it's so important.
Right.
And I don't feel like we get that many opportunities. We don't get a lot of opportunities to put these stories out. And if it goes wrong, it gets shelved and it's on to the next one. And it may take another 20 years or so to get back to this point.
Right.
So I just hope that, everybody takes the time and takes the same dedication to develop the stories and the research and the honor, because for me, that's what I felt on when I took on the task of this, like the research that I put in, even reaching out to the Shirley Chisholm Foundation, talk a little bit about what their foundation does, and then her backstory. So you mentioned earlier about how I was weaving the actual speeches in.
Yeah.
Earlier on, before this final, and Dominique's always getting on me because I'm always developing the script even more and more, taking stuff out, putting stuff in. But her speeches were incredibly long, and I've had to chop them down so much. But everything that she said in those speeches are so relevant today. I mean, some stuff has not been dealt with yet. And so for me, it was hard to kind of chop down some of those speeches, but they're important. And I just looked at it like, my production company focuses on education through entertainment. So I always want to be able to express how the political game works. And that was another thing that I wanted to implement in the piece. And so in doing that, I wanted to take some of those speeches and sort of act them out in a way that was a little bit more engaging to another audience, a younger audience, to say, this is what this exactly means. If you do this, we will get this. It makes it more practical.
You touch on something that Colle mentioned at the top of this, where it really, if we wait for other people to tell these stories, they won't get told. There'll be erasure. And Colle, one of the things that I'd love for you to touch on a bit is when we think about, because what's interesting is that there's a generation, like Shirley Chisholm's generation, this sort of activeness around, well, if I want to see change, I need to get out there and do something about it. And so when she gets out there, even though she's scared, and even though she's not sure this is a good idea, she's like, I'm going to go try. And that's something that I absolutely love, because sometimes, particularly in this 21st century understanding, there's a lot of questioning of whether or not it's worth getting involved because of the way the system is set up and all of that. And I wonder what you thought when you think about Shirley Chisholm. What are some of the big pieces in terms of the lessons that we can draw from in terms of the importance of civic activism.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. She said somebody's got to do it, and she got out there and did it. And I think we saw that in the last election cycle, that lots of first-time candidates were running, folks with no background in politics. Just seeing something needs to be done, someone needs to do it. So that's absolutely part of her legacy. I think that we are seeing more of that now, and hopefully the more will beget more. And yeah, just getting involved in doing something is what she demonstrated for us.
And one of the things that I read about her that I thought was fascinating was when she was running for president, she's like, I know I'm not going to win. That's not the point. The point is to actually do it and to get people thinking about the different ways that we can sort of, bring our ideas together and like create a larger effort. And I thought that was really powerful because I do think we live in a society that says, if you're not trying to win, then why are you here? And I think you put that line in the play, like, well, what's the point of winning if you're not trying to win? What do you think about that? And this is for any of you. What does that teach us?
I thought it was phenomenally weighty and meaningful that she understood the importance of preparing the hearts and minds of America to see someone who looked like her in that position. She said during the interview in 2002, she was talking with Dr. Camille Cosby, and Dr. Camille Cosby said, will a woman be president ever? This is in 2002. And she said, yeah, a woman's going to be president. She said it so matter-of-factly, a woman's going to be president. It's going to take about 25 years. And we need, she said, I believe before a woman can become president of this country, a woman has to be vice president first, so that we can get used to the idea of a woman ascending to higher office. Very intentional about laying the groundwork. She was prophetic in her campaign, and I call her the prophetess Shirley, because I'm hoping and praying that at that 25-year mark, some of those things may come into fruition. But we've got the vice president there laying the groundwork. So it's absolutely true.
Dominique, you, as part of the portrayal, you have to, I don't know how to say this. Oftentimes when you see Shirley Chisholm portrayed, she's very, like, the unbought and unbossed is very upfront. You think this woman is impenetrable. Ain't nobody shaking her. She's not scared of nothing. And what I loved, Odell, about the dialogue, the way you wrote the play, was that you gave her a soft side, a vulnerability that I think oftentimes Black women, I don't know, the world thinks we're aliens and that we don't have that. And so I loved that she said, love found me. She talked about that marriage piece. That was very resonating for me. And I love that you put it in there because I do think she represents a kind of Black woman that's often like demonized, and you gave her a space to be human. And Dominique, I wonder what it was like for you to play that part of the role.
That is what makes it exciting, to not just have her as this like stock character or like a flat, two-dimensional cardboard person. That she was a real person that everyone can relate to. We all have these different sides to us, even though us as Black women show up to work with our boss woman, gear on, ready to go about our business and take charge. We also have these other sides, this vulnerability, this softness that a lot of people love to like deny or dismiss or not recognize in us. And I know that within myself. Like, I go out here with armor on, with my best like face that like, you ain't about to mess with me. I'm tough. I'm from DC. I can hang with the best of them, and not really letting people in because of them judging you or whatever. But it was amazing having that soft side in there, talking about her husband, talking about her dad, which I can relate to so much. I would draw on my relationship with my dad in those scenes. And her even speaking about how scared she was when the shooting occurred, and how people were sending her these letters and tried to actually like harm her, how she was ready to fold, how she was just ready to like, you know what, I give up, I can't. And just showing that we all are human. We are fearful of our lives being taken. We are fearful that our families won't be safe. So yeah, it was really, I'm glad Odell put those moments in there to connect, and you see another side of her that makes her human, and realize that all these politicians or great people that we revere are 100% human, have all these different sides and complexities to them. So that's where I feel like the richness lies, where I got to kind of play and live in those moments.
All right, Odell, talk about the soft parts, man. You did a fantastic job with that piece. It meant a lot to me as a Black woman who has a resting face and all of the things that come with that. It meant a lot to hear her talk about those parts. And can you share with us a little bit about, I'm sure there was an intention behind it, but what were you thinking about in the way you wanted to portray Shirley Chisholm and writing those particular parts?
I mean, the parts that you actually see are the tough parts, It's more so humanizing, making sure that you do get to see another side that's more, that can be relatable, in some ways. It's never lost on me how important those moments are. A lot of those moments when it comes down to love and how you kind of weave it in. And then the idea that somebody, and then she's a human and she's taken on all of these things, of course she's going to feel the weight of everything. I feel I'm one of the people that feels like, and overall strong Black women take on so much that it takes a lot out. I mean, there has to be some space where you get to be to a point where you're like, okay, I can't deal with this. And to say that it is okay to be like, all right, I need some moment. I need to rest, because you cannot do this by yourself. And the same way that I have Conrad there, and I would just figure that he's a strong man that is very supportive of her, but doesn't have to take over the spotlight, but is there to basically hold her down in those moments. And she knows that she knows that he's there, and he's going to be the rock for her during those moments.
Right. And it's funny because in the way, with what we saw, the way he pursues her, convinces her, like, you need to let me take you back, reminds me so much of the stories that you hear about Barack and Michelle, how she's like, I'm not messing with you. And how he had to really show up and be like, yo, I'm really trying to be here. And so it's nice to see, because I do think that that element of the story, that humanizing element of love, is often overlooked, or it's such this dramatic, shrill like perspective. So when she finally has a breakdown, it's like, as opposed to, what, I don't think I can do this. And then being talked into that space of, not only can you do it, I'm going to be here with you. So I did appreciate that part. It did not go unnoticed. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
When we think about, because we are going to sort of bring this to a close, but when we think about the lasting legacy of Shirley Chisholm in the context of right now, where we have so many women in office, we have Kamala Harris as the vice president. I often think she's looking down saying, I told you, this is why I did it. What do you want people to walk away with from this production? And, Colle, for you, what do you want people to take with them in terms of like Shirley Chisholm's message as they move about the world? So I'll start with Odell, and then we'll just go around that way.
I mean, anything is possible. Even on Inauguration Day, they mentioned the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris, her inspiration was Shirley Chisholm. And they actually mentioned that. So, before that happened, I just wanted any woman that aspired to do that to be able to say, I can actually step there. I can actually see this happening. There was a path laid that can make me go a little bit further.
Dominique?
Yeah, I just hope that people can really see that fighting spirit and determination that she had, that boss mentality, that not taking no. Like if they don't give you a seat at the table, you pull up your own folding chair. You know what I mean?
She gonna take it.
She's gonna make a way, and that's
right.
In playing her, I've developed more of a sense of myself and standing in my own truth, and not allowing people's view to determine how I move in this world and my life.
Right.
So I really hope that people kind of like really embody her spirit and really listen to what she was saying. It's not that she thought she was going to be the president, but she was paving the way for others to come behind her. If not me, then who? I think it's
right.
the attitude that we all could have in life. That's what I take away from it.
I love it. And Colle?
Yeah, I think generations will reap what we sow. Having that forethought that Shirley Chisholm had, this isn't for me. This is for those that will come after me and those that will come after them. The door's not open, she said, but it's ajar. So it's like, I didn't get all the way in there, but I left the door open for you. So going about pursuits with that knowledge and that forethought, and then doing it in a way where you actually are laying the groundwork. She didn't have a half campaign. She had a respectable campaign despite the obstacles, right? She had less money funding than the other candidates, less resources, less support. The other candidates weren't getting death threats on the campaign trail. They didn't have to worry about the racism and the sexism. So despite all of that, she ran a legitimate, respectable, above reproach campaign, thereby paving the way for those that come after them. So that's my takeaway. Think about those that will come after you generations from now.
And that is such a great way to, sort of bring this to a beautiful close. I'd like to thank all of my guests, Odell Ruffin, Dominique Brown, I was about to call you something, Dominique C. Brown. I wanted to make sure I got that initial. And Colle Jemibewon. I really do appreciate you all for sitting with us. Thank you to the THEARC Theater for making this happen. Shout out to Glenn Davis for the DC Black Theater Festival. This has been a great night. Thank you so much for spending it with me, and we will catch you at another time. Now, this is going to replay in March, correct? Odell?
The stream, I believe you mean the film aspect of it is supposed to stream. I don't know how long it's supposed to be streaming on YouTube, but
okay, I should have probably found that out. My bad. That's on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna stay.
I haven't even seen it yet.
You should look. You look really good. It's really good. So yeah, I think they're gonna re-air it in March again. So be on the lookout for that.
Oh, okay.
So go to the THEARC's webpage to find out more. Sign up on the mailing list and you can be informed. And we will hopefully catch you sometime soon. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
All right. Good night.